Neither of us are the host, Bo. We we need Jen. That's what we need.
We are trying so hard not to say anything right now. It's so fun to see the chat. Everybody streaming in. New Zealand and Australia.
Amazing.
Hey guys, I'm
What
here.
is
Can you
New
see
Zealand?
me?
Hey,
Save
Jen.
us,
Can you
Jen.
hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yay. We're here. So good to see you guys. Thanks for hopping in, fellas. But wow, yes, it is so good to be with all of you. Thank you for lighting up our chat over here and telling us where you are all from. This is so exciting to see so many people tuning in with us today for this amazing content. We are so excited that you are here and cannot wait to share with you and learn from you from the questions you're going to ask. But yeah, there are so many people on this chat. I was expecting the US, but I've seen Canada and Mexico. Mike from Australia. I don't even know what time it is over there, Mike, but thank you for being with us and for joining us today. It is good to have everybody with us. So,
Jen, lots of Texans.
I know it. He says that because I am a Texas native. And so it's always fun for me to get to see my people. So thanks for being here with us, whether you're from Texas or anywhere else. We are glad that you are joining us. But my name is Jen McMillan, and I am on the North Point Partner team. I actually am a Texas native, but live here in Atlanta, Georgia, and work with this amazing group of churches all over the U.S. and beyond. Oh, ouch. Somebody just brought up the Cowboys.
Unbelievable.
Man, we're already talking smack in the chat, and we've been on live for about a minute now. So thank you for that. I didn't see your name. I just saw Cowboys and my mind got distracted. So ouch. I'm still recovering. Thank you for asking. I know you were concerned about my well-being. But anyway, we're here today to talk about the working genius, not just football. So we are glad that you're here. As I said, I'm Jen McMillan. I work with the North Point Partner team. And I'm joined here today with my good friends, Cody and Bo, who are a part of the table group. Guys, welcome.
Glad to be
so
here.
Glad you're here with us.
Thrilled to be here.
Yep.
Love it.
This is exciting.
So good. It is exciting. We are so grateful to partner with you guys and get to jump in together and collaborate on this today. And so some of you that are here, I'm guessing, are connected in some way to the North Point Partner Network. Maybe you're one of the partner churches in our network, or you've done some work with us in the past or have some familiarity. But I know that a lot of you on here don't have a clue who we are really and are here because the table group and because of the reach that they have. And so no matter how you got here today and where you are joining us from, there's a Facebook ad shout out. Good. Glad you joined us through Facebook. That's awesome. But we are just really glad that you are with us today. So let me give you the lay of the land, what today is going to look like and what you can expect before we jump into all the fun. So a couple months back, I got to be in the same city as these guys, and we were able to film and record some video content that we're going to share with you today about the working genius, a little bit about high level, kind of what it is, and how they are seeing churches, nonprofits, organizations all over benefiting from what the working genius brings to their teams, to their organization. So we're going to play this video, and you guys are going to get to listen into that content. But we know that the real reason that you're here with us live is not just so you can watch a video, because you can do that anywhere. But really, we're going to save the back end of this hour, the last 20-ish minutes, for a Q&A time that we want you guys to drive the conversation. So we are hoping that while you are watching the video, as questions are coming up in your mind, we want you to put those in the chat so that as that video wraps up, we'll be able to spend the last 20 or so minutes just taking questions from you guys and trying to add value to you, no matter where you are, no matter your level of familiarity with the working genius, no matter if this is your first exposure or you've already implemented this in your organization somehow. Hopefully there'll be something for everybody today. So that is where we are headed today. That's what you can expect from our time together. So without further ado, we will roll that video, put your questions in the chat, and we will see you in a few minutes. everybody. Welcome to this webinar. We are so excited to be here with you today. My name is Jen McMillan, and I'm a part of the North Point Partner Team. And I am joined today by my two good friends from the table group, Bo and Cody. Welcome, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks,
Oh
Jen.
my gosh, this is going to be so much fun. We are here today to talk about the working genius and specifically how that can help churches.
Cool.
So you guys have been a part of the table group for a while now. Working Genius has been out for a year-ish now. And all right, well, friends, thanks for hanging with us. Clearly, we are having some technical difficulties. So we are going to pull an audible, and Bo and Cody, we are just going to shoot from the hip here and talk for a little bit while we get our video back up and running.
Jen,
So you know what, guys?
I didn't think we nailed it anyway the first time. So I feel like this second time we can really get into more of the content.
Yep. Here we go. And take two. Everybody ready for that?
All right.
We can just go.
Friends, thanks for hanging with us.
Now I'm hearing a repeat of my voice.
If you're on the YouTube channel, you might want to close that down. If you tried to go there, Jen.
I didn't.
I think it
Oh.
was. I had the YouTube pulled up. It's fine. It's our first time on the internet. It's our first time
Yep.
using Zoom. Okay.
Yeah.
Give us a
We
break.
haven't been doing this for 2 years during a pandemic. It's fine. Zoom is new to all of us. We're all trying to figure it out. So, but yeah, okay. So we're going to get this video thing squared away, figured out, but we're just going to go ahead and jump into a conversation. So, Bo, Cody, Working Genius, you guys have been working on this for a while. In fact, it's how old now? About a year, a little more?
Little over a year. Yeah. It's actually been one of the fastest, received, the most quickly received things that we've ever done at the Table Group, including Pat's book on the 5 dysfunctions, the ideal team player. We've been totally blown away by the momentum around this. And it's really cool to see all of the application, not just in the organization, like the business side of things, but so many churches and nonprofits are latching onto this tool. And so that's why this specific, partnership, the people on this webinar, we're really excited to help use this in a really meaningful way.
Yeah, so part of what happened about 9 months ago is the Table Group looked at the usage of Working Genius, and it was like 60% of the people who were taking this tool, which now hundreds of thousands of people have taken. It was the church community that was latching onto this idea of God-given genius, and how do we know ourselves better? And then how do we use this tool to be able to help us, I hate to say the word again, but pivot, innovate? How do we use it to help us discover what could be new? And so we launched this partnership with North Point Partner Team because we're not staffed to be able to help serve as many churches as you all can serve. And we don't speak the language of church as fluently as you do. So we said, let's deputize the North Point Partner Team to be the ones to take Working Genius and help churches be able to use it to decrease burnout, to increase joy and fulfillment, and help their teams be able to work together faster, be more innovative, be more responsive to their communities. And you all, Jen, you and your team have done this with hundreds of churches already and seen tons of cool impact. So, Jen, I'm wondering if, for the benefit of our audience, if we could put Cody on the spot and say, Cody, give us the Reader's Digest version of what is Working Genius. And then if you screw it up, Jen and I will just correct you. We'll just tell you.
Come back behind.
Okay.
I love it. So actually, I think that's a really unique question, because I think one of the things that's important is we didn't sit around thinking, oh, the world needs another assessment. The world needs another way for us to know what color we are, or whether we're a dolphin or a rhino or anything like that. What happened was we were sitting around, and Pat in particular had some frustration around his work. And that was really interesting. And I bet a lot of people on this call can probably relate, which is like, boy, I'm doing something that I love. In Pat's case, he had started this company. He kind of has free reign to do anything he wants. Why is it that some days he was more frustrated than others? And it was birthed out of that question. Why are you frustrated? Why do you have the grumpies occasionally? And what was really interesting is, I bet most pastors or people that are on this call are, hey, I love what I do. I get to serve Jesus. I get to serve the people in my community. How is it that on certain days I am thrilled by this, and on other days I just feel grumpy and tired and frustrated? So it wasn't let's get on to let's do this and actually figure out a new assessment. It was, we were solving our own problem. And what this turned out to be was, the way I like to describe it is, Working Genius is 20% personality instrument and 80% productivity tool. So it's great for each of us to know, what is my Working Genius? That's step one for sure. But really, it takes on a whole new life of its own when you apply that to the team that you're working on, or inside your family, when you know other people's Working Genius. And so it really is part productivity tool, part innovation, part personality instrument. And we put it up on a whiteboard right after Pat kind of discovered these things and started to realize that it wasn't just solving our problem at work, it was solving a lot of people's problems. So people would come in and say, what is this? And we saw multiple of our clients sort of adopt this right away. And it started to relieve all of this frustration that they had felt in their jobs. And so, Bo, do you think it's helpful to go through the entire widget model like as quickly as possible? Or what do you think? There we go.
It is. I think it is. And I just audibled and pulled this up from the website. So
let's do it.
Yeah.
So here's the concept is this, that there are 6 activities that are required to do any type of work, like 6 skills, 6 tasks, 6 things that we do, whether it's running a company, planning a family vacation, even launching a new product, or in this case, maybe a new ministry or a community event or something like that. And what we didn't realize that it was this defined and this simple, but really what Working Genius did is it distilled down what are these 6 activities. And so let me go through each of them and then explain how we arrived at the conclusion that each of us is uniquely wired, our God-given talents, to do 2 of these really well and enjoy the work. But the first thing that's required in any type of work, and this one is really nuanced and really interesting, is the gift and the genius of wonder. And people who have the gift of wonder are people who actually love to sit around and ponder the bigger picture of things. They're the ones that love to take some time to take a step back. They're responding to what's happening in the environment. And maybe that's in your church, maybe it's in your community, maybe it's on your team, but they like to ask questions like, is this the best thing that we can do? Is there more potential out there? Are we not tapping into, are we really asking the right questions? And that is really critical. If you don't ask the right questions at the beginning, then you skip right to the next genius. It doesn't, the invention might not serve the right question. So these people are critical. And for years, we've had so many people email us and say, boy, I was a wonder. I had no idea you gave language to this thing that I would do my entire career. And I was kind of criticized for it sometimes. People thought I asked too many questions. People thought I wasn't on board with the plan. Wonders are really critical for our teams and for us to get headed in the right direction. So you have the gift of wonder. Then that's not enough. You need the next gift, which is the gift of invention, or the genius of invention. And these are the people that love to respond to the question that the wonder is posing. In fact, Pat is an inventor. The way this came up is one of the people on our team is a wonderer. And she asked the question, why are you like this, Pat? Why are you grumpy sometimes and other times you're not grumpy? That question is something that Pat receives, and he gets to exercise his genius of invention. He was thrilled. So he put a whiteboard out and said, why is it? And started to dissect work and what parts made him joyful and what parts made him frustrated. So inventors love a blank slate. They love to invent something out of nothing. They love a question from the wonderer, and then they love to invent new solutions. This is where why it's so critical that they're inventing toward the question of the wonderer, the right question. But these people get joy and energy out of solving problems, coming up with something out of nothing, going to a whiteboard and saying like, and here's the classic inventor, I have an idea. These are the people that are like, oh, I want to solve that. So, which is wonderful. You get this burst of invention energy, and you need the next genius, which is the genius of discernment, because not all of the ideas that we come up with are always refined the right way or viable ideas. And so discernment actually is this integrated, you could call it intuition or gut feel or good judgment. But what the discerners in the room do, and the people who have this genius, they're the ones that actually evaluate ideas. So they help. In fact, I work with Bo. This is what we do almost on a daily basis. Bo's primary genius is invention. My primary genius is discernment. So I'll walk into his room, his office right there, and he lives a few minutes from me. And he'll have an entire list, a side of his whiteboard that says ideas for Cody to discern. And so he invents all these things, and then with no ego and with all we want is the best ideas to bubble to the surface, we start to evaluate those ideas for viability. What should we be doing? So discerners evaluate, they're kind of discriminatory around ideas. They can often feel like the king or queen of no, like, oh, that's not a good one. And they can be perceived as bubble poppers sometimes on teams. And in your churches, they can be like, I don't think that's a great idea. It's a service to the inventor. That loop, the inventor discerner loop, is really, really critical. Because if you don't have discernment, what you end up doing is inventing things and skipping the evaluation or the refining process and going right to the next genius, which is the genius of galvanizing.
Cody, can I just say one thing about our relationship there? Since we're just doing this live, I can't actually see your face because I'm seeing my own screen that I'm sharing. But before we knew this model, when a discerner would come in, it would always feel like they're pumping the brake. It would always feel like they're slowing me down because I want to move forward with my inventions. And Cody, you've described how before understanding this model, you didn't feel creative. You didn't feel like you could come up with a program or an email or come up with something off a blank slate. And what it's revealed for us is we felt this weird impatience or guilt or judgment before we understood the model. One of you asked, tell us about how this is more about, personality and productivity. Well, when I know my role on the team and I can show up hopefully in humility to know my role kind of in the phases of work, I'm better fulfilled, I'm less frustrated, and we actually can move faster. So that's all. Keep going.
Yeah, no, that's great. It does. And I think after this, I want you to talk about this whole concept of guilt and judgment and how this helps teams be more productive. But let's get through the remaining three geniuses. So once you've evaluated and refined the idea and that ID loop is done. So we've come up with the idea, we've refined it down to what we think is the best possible solution. Maybe that's a new ministry, new program, whatever it is. We then go to the next step, and it's required is this idea of this genius of galvanizing. And the people who get joy and energy from this gift are the ones who love to stand up and rally people and get momentum and energy around the idea that's been discerned. They circle the wagons, they push. I like to describe it as part pushing and part inspiration. So it's like, hey, I want to inspire people around this idea, but I also am willing to push you out of your comfort zone to do things that you need to get this done. Now, they're not the ones that will implement. They're the ones that rally the energy and momentum from the team to make us get there. So they're critical that once you have the idea discerned, you need a galvanizer to stand up and go, hey, guys, let's get this done. I think let's get the momentum and energy focused on this idea. And then you need the next genius, which is the genius of enablement. And these people are wonderful team players. What they do is they respond to the energy of the galvanizer and they say, I'm here to help. And they're the first stage of this implementation process. We wrestled with the idea of this word enablement because it does have a negative connotation, if you're enabling someone around a bad habit, an addiction or something. But when you strip back that meaning to go, what does this person do on a team? It's wonderful. I mean, these are the people that are identified as ideal team players a lot of the times. Like everyone wants them on their teams because their genius is about anticipating what people need to get this done and coming alongside to help. So they're often like the best volunteers, the people who are always willing to jump in and help. And that's what they get joy and energy from. And I will say this, that especially in the ministry context, there's two things that happen. If you have enablement, people downplay it as, oh man, I'm just helpful. I'm just maybe even at worst, I'm a doormat. Like but anybody asks me to do something, it is so critical. We've worked with teams, nonprofits and churches that don't have enablement. And what happens when you don't have enablement is you go straight from galvanizing to the last one, tenacity. And it's a siloed organization. Nobody wants to help. No one wants to come alongside. So that's one thing. The other side of enablement is, let's say you work in a church or a nonprofit or you're a pastor and you don't have this as one of your gifts. You feel like a jerk. You feel like, oh no, I'm a Jesus following Christian. Like, how do I not have the gift of enablement? And I don't have it. And I've experienced a lot of guilt around that. This has helped me relinquish that and really live into who God created me to be. So enablement is critical. And it's the first step of the implementation process, but it's not enough because you need the last genius and the genius of tenacity. So this is someone who lives for checking things off lists, who actually they get joy and energy from finishing a project. They're not okay with us pushing this project or initiative to the 2-yard line. They're not satisfied until we have pushed it into the end zone. So when Bo, who's an inventor galvanizer, wants to move on to the next idea, the person on our team with tenacity says, we're not moving on until we get all of the goodness out of this idea. We have to finish. And so that's the 6 types of working genius. And we'll go into a little bit more about why we have 2 of those that actually have that are called our working genius. So when you take the assessment, 2 of them fall in a category that says, and keep in mind, this is about joy and energy. So it's not about like, oh, at my job as an executive pastor, I have to do the galvanizing. Some people are in that role, and that's the very thing that's frustrating them, because it's not the thing that gives them joy and energy. So when you take the assessment, and what's really critical is understanding that these are the type of work that God uniquely wired us to get joy and energy from. So it's not about, hey, as you know, when you're taking it, and this is the most common thing that people do, is they take it as, oh, this is what I have to do at my job, versus this is what the type of work I'm most fulfilled by. Bo, I'll stop talking. You go.
Cody, I'll give you a pretty good grade on your summary there, buddy. You should think about doing this for a living. There are so many fun questions coming in. Jen, where do you want us to take the conversation next?
Yeah, thank you. I would love that. There are so many great questions, and I think that that's such a great overview. And so Cody, great job on that. I'm thinking now about, I'm seeing lots of questions about what does it look like to implement this on a team? And then even beyond that, with volunteers or people that are serving in your nonprofit, all that kind of stuff. So we'll head that direction. But why don't you talk to the person on this video webinar that is just like, okay, I have some exposure to this. I have some working knowledge of what the Working Genius is all about, but I have no idea how to implement it, how to take it back to my team, how to make it add value to the context that I'm living in. It's been helpful for me as an individual, but now why don't we talk through what it looks like to take this beyond just yourself, to apply it to a team, a church staff, wherever you may find yourself?
What a great question. And that's my favorite thing, is when something immediately resonates with a leader, or maybe not even the team leader, but just a team member. And they're like, I saw a question in there. Okay, what do I do in my worship tech team when there's no galvanizing? Or a lot of you are probably having the aha moments of, boy, all of our volunteer roles are enablement tenacity roles. So what do we do? And let me use the Working Genius model to help explain what I would do. I would first acknowledge the places that you've gotten in your own way because you're trying to work out of guilt and frustration, really guilt and judgment from your working frustrations. Cody and I both have the working frustration of enablement. I look back in the rearview mirror and have caused a lot of silos and a lot of frustration and impatience because I didn't pause to let that genius have space. I didn't pause to acknowledge the genius that was in the room that just wasn't mine. So first I would do that. I would take the assessment. I would reflect on what you've learned about yourself, because my favorite Cody Thompson quote, which I'll just say, Cody, because then people will forget that it's yours and they'll give me credit for it.
I can't wait to hear. I can't wait to hear what it is. So yeah, I'm
good. Everybody wants to know, what's the best role for a lead, what's the best genius pairing for a lead pastor, or for an entrepreneur, or for a youth pastor, or for a copywriter, or a stay-at-home mom? And the answer is, the best leader is the most self-aware leader. You can be a fantastic senior pastor, worship leader, stay-at-home mom with any of the pairings. The key here is to first become more self-aware. Now, Jen, we worked together for a long time. You know that what I want to do is get to work, right? And figure out how do we move further and faster. Do we have to quote Andy Stanley every time we say further, faster?
We really don't. We don't.
Okay. But first we ought to pause and do some self-reflection about our own geniuses. Then what I would do is invite the people around you to take the assessment and show up in a room and say, okay, wanderers, what do you notice? What do you pay attention to when you look at our team geniuses? Okay, inventors, what ideas do you have about what we might do? Discerners, help us refine those ideas to think about what we should do first. Does this make sense? You don't have to come up with a complete comprehensive plan of what you do with your church. Invite the voices around you and use the Working Genius model to plan and begin imagining what you could do as a church. There's my first gut response. Cody.
Love it. No, I actually think, certainly the initial step is for each of us to understand what our own genius is. I do think I saw a couple of questions in the chat that I think will be helpful for this. Is I didn't go through the entire spectrum of working genius to working frustration, because I think that really helps clarify how people are going to use this. And that is the way we describe it is your working genius, and you have 2 of those 6 will bubble to the top in your what we call your working genius category. Those are the types of work that you could do all day that actually fill you up and give you energy and joy. So my 2 are discernment and galvanizing. If all day you were like presenting me ideas, I actually thought, one of the best jobs for me would be like a startup incubator, because people would bring me all their ideas for their businesses. And then I would go, oh, I think that one's the good one. And then I would galvanize them to do all the things that were required to make it happen in the world. So discernment and galvanizing, I'll do that all day. Love it. It fills me up. That's like putting a coffee into like a Yeti or a tumbler with a lid on it. Though that's going to, as long as I'm staying in that area of work, it's going to hold its heat and energy and joy for me for a long time. The next area in the middle is called your working competency, which means that I can do that for a little bit of time, but if I'm relied to do it too long, it's going to eventually burn me out. Like eventually it'll lose. So it's like pouring coffee into a cup without a lid on it. It'll hold its heat for a little while, but if that's really 80% of my job, eventually I'm going to frustrate my team members and be frustrated myself that I have to do work in that area. And then finally, working frustration, which is the last 2, those are like the 2 geniuses that the types of work that you might as well have a hole in the bottom of that coffee cup, meaning as soon as you pour any sort of coffee in there, it just drains out the bottom. So it's not a service to me or my team to do a lot of work in that area. And the one thing I'll say is this, there's probably a lot of pastors and people at nonprofits who say, look, our team is really small. I have to do all of these things. And there's no way for me to outsource this, hire, promote, all of that. The answer is every job is a 6-letter job. In other words, like everything, it's Pollyanna-ish for us to say, oh, why don't you just do work in your 2 areas of working genius? Really, every job requires all 6 letters, but you should know the order of the letters of your job. You should try your best to orient your role around your working genius to spend as much time in that category as possible. And then make sure you're spending as little time as possible in your areas of working frustration. And what I think is so beautiful about this is why I love this audience is my favorite one to talk to, because I get to say, this is how God wired you. We don't need to feel bad about this. Life is a team sport. God wired us to need each other. And so it's amazing. There's no truer statement. The phrase, one man's trash is another man's treasure. I remember for years, I used to think, boy, tenacity is so hard for me, and I didn't have the language for it. It must be equally distasteful for everybody else. So I won't give work away to somebody else. And then I started doing the working genius, and we have someone on our team whose primary genius is tenacity. She loves finishing things. And it's such a beautiful thing to be able to give someone work that they're really gifted at, that God wired them to do. And it's a compliment to something that I find frustrating and really difficult. So Bo, I think you should talk a little bit about at the very core of this is this idea that it relieves what we call guilt and judgment. Tell a little bit about that, because I think as much as we can use this as a productivity tool, I think the subversive like kingdom part of this is that it allows us to understand each other in a way that eliminates this guilt and judgment.
So how about I'll do this? I'll do like a minute on that, and then we've had a bajillion questions, which are so fantastic, and maybe we can go into that. So we've hit on this theme quite a bit, but you all get this. We undermine and cheat actually our own strengths and genius. And instead we spend our life feeling guilty about the things we're not good at. So for example, for me, I'm an inventor, galvanizer. All day, every day, I love getting to create new ideas and rally people around them. But for most of my life, I felt guilty that I haven't finished things. Enablement and tenacity, are the last part of the 6 phases of work. In fact, let's just have a counseling session here. I meet with a spiritual director, and I became aware that I had this picture in my mind that when I got to my 60s, there would be this list of accomplishments that I would have finished at the end of my life. And actually, Working Genius has helped me a lot to realize, no, you know what? I probably have a list of things that I've started, and I've helped invent some things, work with folks like Cody and my wife, who's also a discerner, to figure out which things are right, get them going, and then hand them to folks like Jen, who Jen and I had a great working relationship. She's discernment and enablement. I'm invention and galvanizing. And together I can help start some things that then she can carry forward. And I no longer have to feel the pressure that I have to get everything across the finish line. I can get it started and hand it to people who love getting across the finish line. But it drains me.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of hate it. And anyway, that was probably a minute.
I think I want to. Oh, sorry, Jen. You're the host, and we do a lot of. Bo and I say we have this.
You guys just you play off each other so well, and you talk about this all day. So y'all are great.
So let me tell you a practical, relevant story for people on this call. So I graduated with a youth ministry degree, and before I had the language of working genius. Here's what happened to me as I became a college pastor at my first job out of seminary. I thought I didn't realize I didn't have the gift of invention. So what I did, I would try to sit down to plan a sermon series, and I felt like a fraud because what I would do is I couldn't come up with something out of nothing. What I would do is actually intuitively use my best genius, which was discernment. So I'd go watch 10 YouTube videos of sermons, and I'd be like, oh, that part's really good of that one. And that part's really good of that one. And I would work my way backwards into a sermon because I didn't have the gift of invention. And I felt so much guilt around that. I felt like, oh, all my classmates who graduated with me could sit down and write a sermon, and that's so easy for them. Maybe this isn't the right role for me. And had I had working genius back then, I would understand, oh, actually, I need to bring someone in like Bo who has invention to help me think of possible sermon series ideas or things that we need to do. And I would just discern them. If I had known that back then, that would have served me so well in not feeling guilt or shame around the job that I had. So I think that there's what's beautiful about that is that this idea that we would feel guilt because of a genius we don't have, or assign judgment, unnecessary judgment to other people. Like, have you ever been in a room with people and you're like, why is that person never passionate about what we're doing? And maybe they have a working frustration as galvanizing. They just don't like getting up in front of people and talking about this. And so we make this unfair judgment about, oh, they don't care about our ministry. They don't care about what we're doing in the community. And so you can avoid that in a way that is just, I feel like, so biblical, is just to go, God wired us differently, and that's okay. Let's figure out ways to use each other's strengths.
Love it.
Oh, good, Cody. Well, hey guys, one thing that I want to make sure everybody hears on this call is not just that there's a working genius that they can take individually, but that there's actually some team components to this and the ways that you can implement this to help your team be a stronger, more cohesive, better working together kind of team. I would love if y'all could take just a minute to talk about the team map, what that looks like, and give everybody some just context for what that is. And then if you could take it to the next level and just talk for a minute about, once they have a team map and they know the working geniuses, the working frustrations on their team, how can they then take that information and begin to work out of those geniuses, begin to, potentially pull people into meetings that maybe wouldn't have been into meetings? Like, what does it look like to take the information and then take some next steps to start implementing it to help their teams really thrive?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. I mentioned this a minute ago, but I think that, again, first step, self-awareness. Next step, get the people around you to take it. So actually, we have a team map that we were about to send via email to our list later this week, so you all get to see it first. Here's an example of what it looks like. If you go to work, I promise I'm not trying to sell you something, but if you go to workinggenius.com and have everybody on your team take the report, take the assessment, you'll be able to create a team map where you can see the geniuses of the different folks on your team, the frustrations of the different folks on your team, and y'all are smart people. Immediately, you'll be able to see patterns, right? For example, this team actually looks like the worship and tech team that was mentioned a few minutes ago in the chat. That on this team, there's nobody that has the genius of galvanizing, but There's a lot of people that have the geniuses of enablement, tenacity, and invention. So the other thing that we would want you to do when you look at a team app is pay attention to the leader's genius. So imagine you have the group take this and you just step back and you say, all right, before we look at our team, let's look at each other, right? And I might just have everybody go around the room and say, hey, tell me about a job in the past where you felt joy and fulfillment, and tell me about a time in your current job where you feel frustrated. And see if Working Genius helps to give some language around where people have really felt, like Cody talked about, that cup of coffee that just the energy stays in it all day. And then say, hey, what do we notice about our team? Does this explain any of the strength that we have? Maybe some of the places that we get stuck, lost, or bored, right? This group, it's going to be obvious. We don't have any galvanizing on this team. And then just first acknowledge that pain, acknowledge that this has been frustrating for us in the past. And then immediately what's going to happen is somebody on the team is going to say, well, what do we do about it? We don't have money to hire another person, or none of our volunteers have this genius. So let me just pause there. Cody, anything that you'd add to that before we would go into diagnostics of what to do for that group?
Yeah, so this might be more of a tangent than you were hoping for, but I want to speak to the idea of this involving our volunteers, because I think this tool, I've heard from multiple churches. We were with North Point a few months ago that, hey, in the middle of this pandemic, one of the things that people are experiencing is like, we can't get as many volunteers as we had pre-pandemic. We're really short-staffed. People are burned out. And I think that this might crack the code on this long-standing frustration we have with volunteers, which is we used to, and I worked at a church too, I'm just as guilty as anyone on this, is like, hey, sign up to volunteer and you have a pulse and we have a need, and we'll just plug and play someone with a pulse into whatever need that we have, stacking chairs, children's ministry, whatever it is. How amazing would it be if this tool, which is $25 and you get a 25% discount with partners, is if you could say, hey, Jen, you want to volunteer. I actually want to use you in a way that gives you joy and energy. I don't want to just plug you into the next thing. Let me find out what your working genius is. And so you're investing in them. And then the work that you plug them into can align itself with what their genius is. This would avoid the turnover rates that we see in volunteers, the dissatisfaction, the idea that like it actually gives them a voice. So if I'm going to have Bo be a volunteer at my church, I'm going to look at his genius and go, invention and galvanizing. Hey, what would be great is it would be great to utilize your invention for the next community outreach event that we have. Like maybe you could come up with some ideas, or, hey, you know what, galvanizing, we're kind of bad at that as a staff. What if you were the person that got up and asked for, contributions to the missions that we're going to do next week? Like Bo would go, that's amazing. But what we tend to do is just sort of indiscriminately plug people in with whatever need we have. So I think that in addition to, if we're going to look at this team, to look at our volunteers in a different way that is more engaging, and will alleviate, if I'm a pastor and I realize, and this is my team and we don't have any galvanizing, it would be really, it seems to fall on me anyway, like, oh, there's a gap there. Well, you're the leader, you have to go galvanize. And if that's a frustration for me, it's going to be so painful rather than tapping into someone who actually has that gift.
Mm-hmm.
But what I might do, and churches, sometimes we're the worst at wanting to share, right? We don't want to share some of our volunteers because it was hard enough to get them. If I'm looking at this, and let's say this is that worship team, I might go to the youth ministry or children's ministry and say, hey, tell me who your best galvanizer is, because I'd love to just borrow them. And that won't drain that galvanizer. It's actually going to give them life and energy to get to galvanize in their areas. Cody likes to say, all I do in these Zoom calls is quote Cody Thompson. But he likes to say, burnout isn't a symptom of us doing too much work. It's that we're doing the wrong kind of work. And so many of our volunteers, so many of the staff around us, even our family members, are exhausted, tired, depleted, burned out because they've been trying to work in their frustration. And instead of being empowered and invited to speak into their areas of genius.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I feel like there's been a lot of questions in the chat about like, hey, how do I help somebody on my team that I see is struggling and may not be working out of their working geniuses? How can I make sure that I hire the right people for the jobs that we need them to do? What would you say to people that are in that kind of situation, that are maybe leading others, whether it is staff or volunteers, and you're finding some discrepancy between, you know, how a person is wired, what brings them joy, and what they are doing?
That's such a fun conversation to have, which is, and I've been in a room where we did the working genius, and as soon as you see people's results on the map, the first question you want to ask is like, are we in roles that tap into our working genius? And I've been in a room where like the front desk person that answered the phone actually had the genius of invention and was never given an opportunity on the team to exercise that muscle. And it's so fun to go, hey, do you think you'd like to be in some of the brainstorming conversations about some of the stuff we're doing? I know it's not part of your like job description that we hired you for, but if you're really great at that and would love it, would you like that? And they light up. And it's so fun to tweak people's jobs around this to say, hey, you know what? God wired you this way. We want to use a little bit more of that. I think that's the first. So when you look at a team map, the first question is, are we in roles that lend themselves to our genius? Or like we've worked in the corporate world where, boy, we were with a tech team that had 9 members, and the only person that had the genius of wonder was their lawyer, the head lawyer. And it was like, they immediately saw that as a gap, and they said, hey, would you actually be interested in thinking about the market and kind of outside of your role? And it's a huge gift to give someone work to do that gives them joy and energy that they're uniquely wired to do.
That is fantastic. Y'all, I feel like we are just like at the tip of the iceberg here, and we have so much great content to share, and y'all are such experts in the field. But we're going to have one last question before we go. But before we get to that, I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't talk to everybody about how to get better access to some of these resources and some things that are available to you guys. So if you're curious about this, if this has piqued your interest at all, or even if this is something that you've already kind of engaged with, allow me just a minute to share with you about some potential next steps that you could take, and some ways that us at the North Point Partner Team and the Table Group want to come alongside you and help your team, your church, your nonprofit just be the best it can be. So if this is new to you and you have not taken the assessment yet, everybody's mentioned, I hope you've seen it in the chat, that there is a discount of 25% if you type the word partners in when you're trying to take the actual assessment. But once you've done that, we have, with the Table Group, put together a little course that you could go through as an individual. This is free. It's something that you could download. It's some great resources and content to just kind of help you get your arms around what the working genius is, what yours are, what your frustrations are, just to give you some context for understanding this whole working genius platform and what it is. So that's one option that is available to you. If you've kind of already done that and you're looking for something that would be the next step for your entire team, we put together what we're calling just the self-guided team workshop. And so this is something that hopefully once your team has taken the assessment, this is something that you could walk through on your own with the group of people that you want to go through this with, whether it is a staff or volunteer team, whoever it may be. This is something that you could just walk through by yourself with your team. We've given you some resources to facilitate those conversations, to kind of dig into what this looks like for you and your setting. But then if you're looking for even more, you will see on this slide at the very end that we also are offering a facilitated team workshop. And so this would be the kind of thing where there are lots of certified consultants all over the place. All of the North Point Partner Team here, we've all been certified as Working Genius consultants. And so we would love to come alongside you guys, and it could be the kind of thing just like this over Zoom. There's lots of different ways we could do it, but we would love to help you facilitate a conversation with your team about the Working Genius, to help you, figure out how to implement this, look at the roadblocks that you might be facing with your specific team, and kind of get into the nitty-gritty a little bit more about the Working Genius and about what it could look like to implement this in your current context. So if any of those are helpful for you, we want you to know that they are available. You are going to get a lot of follow-up conversation and communication from us. And so we will make sure that you have access to be able to sign up for all of these things. So our hope, again, at the end of this, is that you're just leaning in a little bit more, that you're excited about the possibility of what this could mean for yourself, for the teams that you're a part of. And so we just want to come alongside you as best we can to help you guys and offer these resources. So just want you to have that in your back pocket as we get close to wrapping up this call today. But guys,
can I
go ahead?
I know you said that as a North Point person, but I actually want to reiterate this. Like, what you guys did to take this tool and customize these options for churches is really, really amazing. You guys walked us through this free resource for the individual course. That resource is incredible. These self-guided and the facilitated workshops. I just really want to reiterate that we are so thrilled that you guys took this stuff and then packaged it a little bit more specifically for churches and ministries. And so from everything from buying the assessment to these options all the way through to working, becoming a certified facilitator. I just want to make sure people know, Holly, thank you. I'm galvanizing right now. These resources are really, really incredible. And I wanted to make sure that it didn't just come from the North Point team. We're thrilled about this partnership and what you guys have done with this stuff.
Well, thanks so much for saying that, Cody. We did not even script that. If you had wondered if any of this had been scripted, that part was not.
We were supposed to have a video or something. No,
we do. It's somewhere. It's out there. We'll make sure all of you get it, and it will come to you after the fact. But thanks for hanging with us through all of those technical issues today. But hey, as we conclude today, I think, again, I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions in the chat. Y'all had such amazing questions. But in conclusion, I would love to just hear you guys talk a little bit about really the benefit of Working Genius. Cody, thank you for starting us off by telling us the history of how this kind of came about, how the Working Genius was created and came to be. But for anybody out there that this is new to them, or even for those that are kind of bought in, I would just love to hear from you guys what it is that makes Working Genius unique and why you think this is different from any of the other very numerous, kind of self-assessments that are out there. Kind of give just a high level view of what the value of this is and how you really think that this is distinguished in the marketplace, considering all the other things that are out there.
Yeah. Bo, who wants to galvanize that one?
Yeah, you only gave us 5 minutes left, Jen. We could talk about this for a long time. I'll start, and then Cody, you can have the last word. Jen, we're assessment junkies. We love DISC. We love Myers-Briggs. I love RightPath and Enneagram. But for every time I would have my team go through those, I never knew necessarily what to do with it. What role do you put an Enneagram 3 in? Or what volunteer role should an ENFP, Myers-Briggs, go in? Or I'm a DI. What does that mean about what work I actually get done? And what I love about Working Genius is I love movement. I love innovation. I love progress. And Working Genius helps me align the right way for me to empower, equip, release the people around me while making sure that we're getting work done, right? I want self-awareness that isn't just navel gazing, but that is leading to more people being engaged and involved in nonprofit work in their local church. We want to create thriving economies. I want people to go home and be more filled up at the end of the day, so they have more to give to their kids, their neighbors, and to their churches than they were before. And we think that the key difference there is knowing what gives you joy and fulfillment. So I think the difference is, from me as a leader, I know that my role is to speak life into each person, to know what words I can use, what opportunities I can give them, and then to orchestrate the process from wonder all the way to tenacity. And frankly, I just think Working Genius helps us get more done. I think a lot of leaders entered this COVID season 2 years ago and thought, oh, never waste a crisis. This is our best opportunity to pivot and to change. And 2 years later, they're like, well, I guess I failed because I didn't totally innovate the church, or I guess we're floundering because attendance is down. And I want to say, no, you're just getting started. You're just getting started. And this can be a tool to help you be able to orchestrate the process of work and give life to the people who are around you when they're feeling pretty darn burned out.
Yeah. I think that, I'll tell a personal story about why I think this is unique. And that is, it's unique in two ways. One is applied to work, which is really, Myers-Briggs is great, Enneagram, all those things help us understand ourselves. But it's still, at the end of the day, when I got my Strengths Finder back, I was like, how do I work with these other people that are on my team? And there's so many of them. So it's applied to work and the simplicity. And I think with just the 6 different categories, and I describe Pat, he invented this model, but I describe him more as like a excavator of truth. So it's like he looked around and he's like, it's not like we invented the 6 activities of work. Those feel true. And it's not that we invented that we each have 2 geniuses. It's that they feel like that's accurate for me in my life. And I will describe it like this. I worked for Pat for 7 years before we had Working Genius. And it used to be when Pat was gone, they'd say, hey, Cody, go do your best Pat impression because I'm an ENFP and he's an ENFP. And I'd go to the board and I'd never really do what Pat did. And I would feel all this shame. Like, am I not smart? Do I watch too much TV or listen to too many podcasts? Or why is it that I can't do the thing that Pat does? And I know I add value, but I wasn't quite sure. And Pat, it was because he's an inventor and a discerner, and I'm a discerner and a galvanizer. And even though we were both ENFPs, it didn't tell me how I showed up to work. So do yourselves a favor, learn about yourself, learn about your team, put yourselves in the position to do what God created you to do. I think it's, we're thrilled that there were 450 representatives from a church on this meeting. I'm just so grateful that you guys joined us. So thank you.
Absolutely. And Cody and Bo, we can't thank you enough for your time and for sharing your wisdom with us today. And for all of you that attended this webinar today, thank you so much. Your presence has been invaluable. The questions you've asked have been amazing. And I just want to take a quick second to just encourage you that I don't know your context and exactly what you're doing, but the fact that you're on here shows us that you care deeply about the future of the church, the future of the nonprofit that you lead, about the teams that you're a part of, about the people that you are guiding towards Jesus. And we are just so excited to see and hear about all the good work that you're doing. And if we can be a resource to you along the way, it is our joy and our privilege. So from us at North Point Partners and from Cody and Bo at the Table Group, we're here for you. We're cheering you on. And thank you so much for joining us today. We'll be in touch via email with all the resources that you could want from today, the video that we weren't able to play, and some extra goodies in there too. So thank you so much for joining us today, and hopefully we'll be able to connect again soon. Y'all take care.